So Daniel 9:25 to 26. As you guys remember, right? There's after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. Daniel speaks about 70 weeks of prophecy. And verses 25 and 26 speak about 69 weeks. It says there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's a total of 79 weeks. And this prophecy began when the command was given to restore and build Jerusalem. And then it went all the way through until the Messiah Prince. And we see here 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And they will build, the street shall be built again, and the wall, right? That was, as we have studied, that was Nehemiah. Nehemiah had permission to go build the walls of Jerusalem. We know that there were I believe 3 or 4 other commands given to the Israelites. It began with King Cyrus from the Medo-Persian Empire. He gave them permission to go back to Jerusalem after being captive for 70 years in Babylon. He gave them permission to go back to Jerusalem to start building their city. And we see here that when we read Nehemiah, that the walls were not built yet. And to them, it was very important to have those walls. And that's where this prophecy begins. It says, the street will be built again and the wall, even in troublesome times, because we know that Nehemiah had a lot of, it was difficult for him, the whole process of building those walls. There was a lot of oppression and a lot of obstacles that came up while he was building the wall. And then it says that after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with the flood, and the end of the war, desolations are determined. We know this happened in the year 70 AD when the Roman Empire destroyed Jerusalem and the walls. You can go to the next slide, please. And this is a timeline. The timeline that we probably went through a few weeks ago. I think we went, I meant to say probably I think it was a few weeks ago. And we see here, right, the 7 weeks, that's when Artaxerxes, I believe that's how you pronounce it, Artaxerxes gave that permission to Nehemiah, the command to go and build the walls of Jerusalem. That's 7 weeks. That's 49 years it took them to build those walls and restore Jerusalem. And then we see 62 weeks, which is 434 years. Just remember, each day is a year, represents a year. So period of time leading to Messiah the Prince, that during those 434 years, we see that then the Messiah came and then he was crucified. And in this moment is when we see that this prophecy did a halt. There's a gap. And as I mentioned earlier, it has been difficult for the Jews to accept Jesus as the Messiah because to them there is no gap. They believed that the Messiah was going to come and he was going to fulfill all the prophecies in his first coming. They don't know about the first coming, the second coming. They have no division. There's no gap in between for them. So we see that in the first section of this prophecy, there are several prophecies that are fulfilled, but not all of them. So since not all of them were fulfilled, then they said, no, this is not the Messiah, because they thought that all the prophecies were going to be fulfilled when Christ came in his first coming. But there's another set of prophecies that will be fulfilled in Jesus' second coming. And to them, that's why it's difficult for them to understand that this is the Messiah. They wanted to see everything fulfilled all at once. But right now we are in that prophetic gap. We are in the time of the Gentiles. There's a gap there because we know that the Jews rejected the Messiah. They rejected Jesus as the Messiah. They did not recognize him as a Messiah. And so they hardened their hearts, as we see in Romans 11:25. So it says there's a partial hardening that came upon Israel. And this will be until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. So right now we're in the time of the Gentiles. And when will the 70th week start? And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit more today. And that is the question, like, when will this 70th week start? Even though we've spoke about it a few times, but we're just going to repeat a little bit more and talk about it a little bit more today. And we could go to the next slide. So whoever would like to read these 7 verses is more than welcome to open their mics and read it for me. We're going to start speaking about the vision that Daniel had in Daniel chapter 7, where there will be 4 beasts. So whoever wants to just open your mics and start reading.
Okay, I'll start. So
Thank you.
in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And 4 great beasts came upon from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I watched it until its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to it, and suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up. It was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they thus said to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this, I looked. There was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
Amen. Thank you, Matthew. And hopefully you guys can see here, there are 4 beasts, as Matthew was reading. He was describing the 4 beasts in Daniel's vision. And just to sum it up, if you can go to the next slide, Matthew. Here we see the 4 beasts that are described in Daniel chapter 7, the first 7 verses, right? The first one was a beast. It's like a lion with eagle's wings, right? And then it was giving a man's heart. The second beast is like a bear, raised up on its side, and then it had 3 ribs in its mouth, and it was told to arise and devour much flesh. We see the third one. It's like a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, right? Just isn't this crazy, all the symbolism? And it was given dominion. But the 4th one, that's the one we're going to talk about a little bit more. It was dreadful. It was terrible. It had iron teeth. Remember that iron teeth? Brass nails. And it had on its head 10 horns, 10. And then a little horn rose, and that little horn tore down 3 of the 10 horns. Okay, so just bear with me, all these symbolism. If you could go to the next slide, just so you guys could understand what each of these beasts represent. They represent a nation. The lion represents, this is in Spanish, but you understand it. The lion represents Babylon. We see the bear represents Greece, and the leopards, Medo-Persia, and the most horrible beast of all. Remember, it said iron. Usually when it talks about iron, like the statue that Nebuchadnezzar, the dream of Nebuchadnezzar's that he had of this statue, it speaks about iron as well, and it represents Rome. So we see here 10 horns, but remember, there's a little horn that Daniel was able to see, that when he saw this animal with 10 horns on the head, he saw that a little one was growing, and this little one knocked down 3 of them. It plucked them out. So there's 8 left. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Verse 8 of Daniel 7. We read the first 7 verses. Now this is where we're going to focus more a little bit. We'll focus a little bit more on this one. And I'm going to ask Adriel if you can please read it.
I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things.
Thank you. So we see here that this little horn came up, and it plucked out 3 of the ones that were already there. And this little horn had eyes of a man, and it had a mouth that spoke great things. Okay, so if we can go to the other slide, and I want you guys, when we read these verses, I want you guys to tell me what that little horn represents, or who it represents. So I'll ask Nathan if he can read both Bible verses, please.
Okay. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And Revelations 13:5 says, And there was given unto him his mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months.
Okay. And Nathan, who do you think this little horn is representing by reading these verses? Can you tell who that little horn is representing?
Is it the Antichrist?
Correct. Yes. It's the Antichrist, because he's also called the beast, right? The beast, the mark of the beast. So yes, this is the Antichrist that will rise, because those 10 horns represent 10 nations. You know, it's kingdoms, a king, a kingdom. It's the same thing. So 10 kingdoms, but out of those kingdoms, we see this little horn rising with great power. And it had a mouth that spoke great things and blasphemies. But look closely at the end of this verse 5 of chapter 13 of the book of Revelation. It was given unto him to continue 42 months. How many years does 42 months represent? I mean, or how many is it? How many years is, how many years and months, or in years? 42 months, how would you change it into 2 years? 42 months, who knows?
Well, it'd be like 3 years and 6 months.
Correct. Very good. Yes, 3.5 years. Okay. I just want you guys to keep that in mind. 3.5. Do you guys remember the timeline, how the week 7 was divided into 3.5 and 3.5? Week 7 is 7 years, right? 3.5 and 3.5. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. You can go to the next one, Matthew. Yeah, you can move it to the next slide if it lets you. Okay, so here is that little horn. You know, this is just, of course, a drawing or a depiction of what it is. We don't know exactly how it's going to look, but I mean, how Daniel saw it. But this is just to give you an idea. You see those other 3 ones that are rooted out. They should have been rooted out. But yeah, we see here that Daniel was able to see this little horn that had eyes, and it had a mouth that spoke great things and blasphemies. That's horrible, you know. Of course, it's symbolism. These horns are representing power, representing a king, a kingdom. So we can go to the next one. So I'm just going to ask really quick, how many beasts does Daniel see in his vision? Whoever knows, you can open your mics and answer. How many beasts does Daniel see?
4.
That's Adrian, right? Okay, you can go to the next one. Very good. The next one as well. I have 3 questions. Describe the horns on the 4th beast. Who can describe the horns on the 4th beast? Something that you remember of those horns on the 4th beast.
Wasn't it like very sharp or something?
Okay. What else can you guys remember of those horns, guys? Anything that you can remember that I mentioned about those horns on that horrible looking beast?
Weren't they like eyes?
Very good. There were eyes. What else? I'm going to ask, let me see. Adro, do you remember anything about those horns?
I guess I just mostly remember like the face. Not really sure what else.
You could go to the next slide, Matthew. Thank you. So it's 10 of them, right? It had 10 horns. 3 of them were plucked out, right? When that little one came out, there's a little one. That little one had eyes, like you mentioned, Adrian, and then a mouth that spoke great things and blasphemies. That's what how Daniel describes the horns on top of this 4th beast. If you can go to the next slide, and we'll probably just take maybe we're going to do 2 more slides and then we'll be done. Last question for this section. What does the little horn, I'm sorry, who does the little horn represent?
Yeah,
Isn't it
I'm sorry?
the Antichrist?
Very good. Very good. You can move it to the next slide, please. The Antichrist. Okay. You know what? I'm not going to go further. I know I didn't say much, but I'm going to stay there so you guys can just think about these beasts for right now. There's much more to talk about, but I know all this that happened, it's just